Right, moving on to more business update. Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Michael, good morning.
Good morning. Dovish tone, really. Janet Yellen about to speak this evening. She's the incoming Treasury Secretary, and she's got some very dovish comments to make. We've been fed some of the stuff she's going to say. I'll come on to it in a moment. So therefore, Asian markets actually quite liked all that. Mainland China markets, though, having a bit of a circumspect day. Investors appearing for once to favour Hong Kong securities. In the capital city, Beijing, I've got some good figures for you as far as that's concerned. Foreign investors claim more than a third of commercial property real estate deals last year. Foreign direct investments much higher than 2020, expected in 2021, and that was a record year. But investors note that China is experiencing a lot of rapid growth at the moment. But as I said to you yesterday, its consumers are not necessarily buying. And critics have also said that changes within China's corporate sector are coming to slowly. Unfair practices remain. Beijing's strict capital controls make it very difficult if you're actually investing in China to get money out. However, China comes up with these GDP figures. We take them as being the truth and all the rest of it. We have no idea, but there's one measurable statistic, which is that electricity consumption is up by 3.1% on 2020. Now, it doesn't sound a great deal and it sounds a very dull statistic, but I can tell you that's big as far as China's concerned. So something is actually going on there. Their road to recovery, a rapid V-shaped recovery, looks good at the moment. I'm going to recap the United States for you, bearing in mind that yesterday was a very, very quiet day because it was a holiday day today. But Miss Yellen, Janet Yellen, the incoming Treasury Secretary, has said that she feels that now with interest rates at historic lows, this is what you're going to say this evening, it's time to act big with the benefits of the challenge of a larger deficit.
Right, Michael, we'll take a quick, brief break. We'll come back to you and we'll talk some more after this. Right, welcome back to the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. We'll go back to Michael Wilson from London. Michael?
Yeah, so I was talking about Janet Yellen. She's going to be speaking this evening. She's the incoming Treasury Secretary. And what she's saying is that it's time for the government to act big, the benefits outweighing the fact that there's going to be obviously a larger deficit. It seems to underline the fact that Biden is going to try to carry through with his 1.9 trillion stimulus package. We'll see about that. And as far as inflation's concerned, I know that the doctor's worried about this, but it's you're receiving 10% 10-year debt at 1.1%. That's effectively interest-free. And the government, of course, possibly Senate Republicans and perhaps some more centrist Democrat ones may have something to say about that, but maybe it'll get pushed through. Anyway, it looks all good. However, Wall Street may be looking at slightly more regulatory problems. It might be, as I put it, Biden bound. I'll tell you why. Because there are two particular nominations for consumer champions to head up. One, the financial, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and also the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Now, those two organizations are going to have people who've got a strong history of consumer legislation and support, and it may be that Biden actually cracks down on some of the practices on Wall Street. Let us turn our attention to the world's fourth largest automobile maker. There was a huge merger between Fiat Chrysler and Peugeot. That Stellantis, it's called, as you see there, it's well received by European investors on its first day of trading. Climbed 7.5% on the expected price there following a launch in Paris and Milan. We cross the English Channel back into the UK and we talk about the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Finance Minister here, Rishi Sunak. He's going to clash with businesses about his proposed corporation tax increases. We have a national budget coming up in March. As is usual, lots of ideas get flown, flying kites it's called, see which ones get shot down, which people actually like. There is a proposal to increase corporation tax. He's saying that the taxpayer-supported businesses, time for businesses to bring some of that back. Very strange argument for a chancellor to have, but there we are. Corporation tax at the moment, 19%. In this country, therefore there's plenty of room for an increase. Wouldn't necessarily make the UK less competitive than other countries who have much higher corporate taxes. And as far as commodities are concerned, very, very briefly, both oil and gold, not a lot of movement there. I mean, we're waiting for something concrete, I think, to come out of the United States. The inauguration, as you've been talking about for some time, will be all theatre and showbiz. Where the money comes in, we'll see about that later in the week.
Well, Michael, I have a set of questions for you. I don't know whether we'll have enough time to deal with them. Now, the first one is in the United States, where President Trump, through his spokesperson, has said that ban on travel restrictions on Brazil, Schengen countries, and the rest of Europe will be lifted by January 26. What is the sense in tying the hands of an incoming administration, because it will take effect from January 26, by which time President Trump will already be in office? Of course, his spokesperson for the Biden presidency has said that that will not stand and they will not take it. That's one. Two, China, you talked about China. On Monday, the National Bureau of Statistics in China announced 2.3% rise in the economy of China in the last 3 months of 2020. The projection is that this year, the Chinese economy will even grow to about 7.82%. Now, China's economy has been growing consistently. Exports are growing. Infrastructure is developing. What is China doing that the rest of the world is not doing? And what are the lessons that those other economies that have been on a steep decline can learn from the example of China, particularly when you consider the fact that some countries blame China for bringing the virus in the first place? Well, I put that in quotes. And then finally, the IMF managing director is saying there will be a lot of uncertainty in 2021, and that the IMF is considering special drawing rights to create fiscal space for many countries. How can developing countries, poor countries, in the face of IMF conditionalities, take advantage of that if it happens?
IMF first, always looking at the world through the rear-view mirror. I wouldn't get caught in the debt trap that the IMF actually gets countries that borrow from it. They are very, very strict indeed. And the conditions, look at Greece, for example. If you accept money from them, developing countries should be very wary of the IMF, I think, because remember, they are theorists. They don't actually work within those kind of economies. So that's number one. Number two, China. There is a weakness as far as China's concerned, and it's acceptability. Whatever you think about them, whatever these figures come out, and I gave you the only reliable one that I've seen so far is their increase in electricity consumption, which can actually be measured. Right? You may be right about GDP in 2021. I have no idea. The 6.9% rise in GDP in the last 3 months of 2020 may well have happened. It may not have happened. But the one thing that China needs, and America can help this, United States can help this, as can Europe, as can the UK, is talk to them in better terms than they were enjoying being talked to when President Trump was president of the United States, because their weakness is they want acceptance from the rest of the world, and they're not getting that at the moment. They are odds on, they are facing up to the rest of the world. That is their weakness. They may have economic strength, no doubt they do. They are an autocracy, they are a communist state with capitalists around the outside. Whether you think that's a strength or not, I don't happen to believe it. But the weakness is that they want to actually get on with the rest of the world. And I think that's something that diplomats ought to be working very, very hard to do. One of Biden's first tasks, I would suggest. And finally, as far as closing borders is concerned, I had no idea. I mean, I looked at those comments yesterday. I looked at the Biden statement, or the Biden spokesman statement's comments later yesterday. I'm as mystified as you. I have no idea. If I were them, I'd actually get the vaccine out. The vaccine is the key to all this. And if it means closing the borders, then close the borders. I haven't an answer for you as far as those conflicting views are concerned. I find them very confusing indeed. I share your worry, though, that we 6 days from the 20th to the 26th. What is the point?
Okay, I mean, that's a great insight. What's the point there? But I've got two quick questions for you. Number one will be about the letter sent to Rishi Sunak recently by British filmmakers telling Rishi Sunak that this has affected our business. The film industry brings about 4.3 billion pounds sterling every year to the British economy. That money is all gone. And Rishi Sunak keeps thinking the furloughs are the silver bullet. Is he thinking right? Secondly, you keep talking about the fact that, oh, peak oil is not here yet. But I was shell-shocked recently, Michael, when Total invested 2.5 billion in the Adrian Green solar power project in India. So, is this not the beginning of the end of oil? If Total can invest about $2.5 billion in a solar project?
No, I don't think it is. I think what Total is doing is actually hedging its bets. I'd do exactly the same. That's what I would expect to do. BP started this 20 years ago. They said that they were going to become a greener company. They were going to become an energy company. If it took solar, then it takes solar. You know, that's the way forward. That's what Total are doing. I don't necessarily think, I don't think this is going to be the end of fossil fuels, put it like that. I think there's a long way to go before wind, solar, and all the other things that may well produce electricity. Remember, you've got to build the things to start with. You've got to change economies around. You've got to alter power structures around the world. What's going to happen to OPEC, for example? You've got to think through these big organizations actually taking place. So I think it'd be a long, long time. I don't feel it's strange that Total has invested in solar. Good for them to diversify. Nigeria needs to diversify as well, of course.
All right, and I talked about 4.3 billion being lost to COVID. The British film industry is speaking tough. Rishi Sunak thinks it's all about a furlough scheme.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with the furlough scheme. I don't really see what else could have happened. I didn't really agree with quantitative easing when it was brought in 2008 to save the world from collapsing. But certain things you actually need to do. The beginnings of furlough were to stop businesses actually collapsing so that when the turnaround actually came, and it's been a lot longer, and how could anybody predict which way it was going to go? It's been a lot longer than possibly expected. Furlough is an idea. Yes, it's there. We are where we are. The money's been spent. Thieves have got in. Dishonest people have got into that kind of thing because it was rolled out very, very quickly without adequate supervision. All those things are absolutely correct. The problem is we are where we are right now. And what Sunak needs to do is to somehow square the circle. And he would attempt to do that in his budget by increasing taxes. We have yet to hear about that.
Well, Michael, just before we go, I think we still have a minute or so. Well, the UK, despite the fact that hospitalizations continue to increase and the situation is still precarious, 4 million people already have received the jabs. The Prime Minister says there is hope by spring. But there's also been some talk about 70-plus year-olds, persons in your category, getting a mail, in the box, inviting them to come and take the job after the 80-plus have been taken care of, just a few left behind. Are you looking forward to taking that job? And what's the mood in the United Kingdom with the progress that is being made with the vaccinations?
As soon as we've finished, I'm going to check my letterbox as soon as we've finished to find out if I've got an envelope from my local doctor. I hope so within the next few days, because my wife and I are both sort of within that kind of category, and we're hoping for an injection fairly soon. I suspect it probably will be a couple of weeks, but we We are actually, I think, about a third in the world now of actually getting these things out and getting vaccinations actually done as a proportion of the population. And I have to say, it appears to be working quite well. The difficulty, of course, is what's the economy going to be like afterwards? I do not know, and nor does anybody else. But to answer your question, yes, I'm looking forward to my 2 jabs.
All right, Michael, I mean, who still writes letters? I'm sure your GP has your email address, Michael.
Well, thank you very much, Michael Wilson. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.
Right, welcome back. Still the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Abby Owolawi is here with us. Abby, great to have you.
Thank you, Rufai.
Yeah.
So currently, the U.S. stands on the brink of 400,000 reported coronavirus fatalities, almost double the total of, next more severely hit nations, and still mourning more than 20,000 deaths per week. The pace of vaccinations is picking up, but it remains well below the optimistic estimates from public health experts, where the first vaccines were authorized last month. President Donald Trump issued a proclamation yesterday announcing that he will rescind travel bans for non-U.S. citizens from Brazil, the United Kingdom, and much of Europe, with effect from January 26th, the same day that all travelers must present a negative coronavirus test or proof of recovery from COVID-19 to enter the United States. Now, in South Africa, health services are buckling under the strain of soaring COVID-19 infections, driven partly by a new variant of the virus spreading across the country. Medical professionals warn that the relentless infection wave has seen more than 130,000 new COVID-19 cases and 4,000 related deaths in the last week alone. And that, of course, threatens to overrun both public and private hospitals. And in Nigeria, within the last week, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has recorded 86 deaths across the country, with 14 new fatalities confirmed on Monday. Now, the latest weekly fatality figure is exactly double that of the previous week, where 43 fatalities were confirmed between the 5th and the 11th of January. The NCDC also recorded 622 new recoveries, increasing the total number of discharged patients to 89,939.
Well, earlier on, I was commenting on the Nigerian situation, and I had drawn attention to statements credited to the governor of Kogi State. In that regard, the governor of Kogi State has been very consistent. You will recall that initially when the COVID-19 pandemic arrived in Nigeria, it was one governor in particular who said there was no COVID-19 in Kogi State. And even when specific cases were identified and attached to Kogi State, he insisted through his Commissioner of Information and other government officials that those cases belong to the Federal Capital Territory, not Kogi State. And in the recent intervention, he's been trying to discredit the vaccine. He says, if you want to take the vaccine, you must keep your eye open. And he even referred to the case of the Pfizer polio vaccination that was controversial in the past. And the problem, this is the major problem that Nigeria is likely to face with the vaccination process. When the vaccines from the COVAX facility arrives and the vaccine from the African Union Vaccine Availability Scheme arrives, and maybe when Nigeria also manages to get vaccines either from China or from wherever that Nigeria is talking to, you could have public officials, you could have prominent figures promoting vaccine hesitancy by coming up with all these conspiracy theories, by coming up with discouraging statements about the nature or origin of the virus itself. Whatever the governor of Kogi State has said so far, I would like to reiterate, is not borne out by science. He's quoted as saying, for example, that scientists have not been able to find a solution to HIV, to malaria, to cancer, but that they've, at breakneck speed, come up with a vaccine for coronavirus. Well, what the scientists tell us is that this has been possible because the technology that has been used is what is called the mRNA, as different from the old technology that was used, to treat viruses. And I think that persons in positions of authority need to be informed. They should not hide under the cover of the title that they bear to mouth ignorance and to promote ignorance and to mislead the people. Now, Yahaya Bello, the governor of Kogi State, is not the only person in this regard. There are others whose efforts and interventions and statements also undermine the efforts of the federal government, specifically the Presidential Task Force. I think there was a video that was in circulation showing Senator Dino Melaye also raising doubts about COVID-19. And then there are also religious figures, including some of the most prominent Pentecostal pastors in Nigeria, also coming up with conspiracy theories. I think that the Presidential Task Force, the NCDC, must, as part of their assignment, as we begin now to talk about vaccines and vaccinations, begin to engage some of these prominent influencers, persons who have platform, persons who have voice, and who may just not be well informed, to begin to engage them and to enlighten them. Because you can have the federal and state governments in one direction trying to make progress, and you have these loose cannons, just coming up and saying whatever they want. However, with regard to the situation in Nigeria, I think the Christian Association of Nigeria should be commended. We've seen a situation whereby the Christian Association of Nigeria has stepped forward to come up with new guidelines for churches. And I hope that the Christian Association of Nigeria will also be supported by the Pentecostal Federation of Nigeria, the PFN, so that we can have the religious bodies speaking with one voice with regard to the threat that is posed by the second wave. Third, with regard to the reopening of schools. Before now, the National Union of Teachers said that they were opposed to the reopening of schools in the light of the second wave and in the light of the lack of preparedness. But Mike Ene, the Secretary General of the National Union of Teachers, is saying something different now with the reopening of schools yesterday. He's now saying that the NUT now supports the reopening of schools, but that the National Executive Committee of that body will meet on Thursday to review the situation in the country and to offer suggestions as to how states and the federal government should proceed hereafter. It will be interesting to hear what the National Union of Teachers, whose members are directly involved, who are major stakeholders in the reopening of schools, to see what has been their experience with the reopening of schools this week and what suggestions they have. Now, again, still on Nigeria, we're concerned that members of the National Assembly are talking at cross purposes. You will recall that over the weekend, the chairman of the Basic Education and Services Committee, Professor Julius Inhombere, issued a statement in which he said that the relevant committees of the National Assembly were not consulted and they've not been carried along. Now, in the papers today, we have been told that the chairperson of the House Committee, the same House of Representatives, on tertiary education is saying something contrary. He is saying that the House Committee on Tertiary Education was consulted by the Federal Ministry of Education, that that committee was part of the conversation, and that that committee is committed, believes, supports the reopening of schools. Same House of Representatives of Nigeria, two committees on education talking at cross purposes. We would like to see, as a way of building confidence and trust, government agencies, government stakeholders, key players in this attempt at addressing the challenge of COVID-19 in Nigeria, operating with a greater unity of purpose and not speaking at cross purposes, whereby one committee will say we were consulted and another committee will say we are not aware of it and issue a statement. It creates a lot of confusion. It misleads the people. It gives the impression that Nigerian political leaders are not serious about this particular issue. And if there are lessons that we can learn from the UK, where significant progress is being made, for example, then of course, or from Greece or from other jurisdictions, then we need to take this challenge of COVID-19 and the rising wave of infections more seriously. As for the United States, well, we can only hold President Trump responsible for the escalation in the figures and for the crisis that the United States finds itself in the last moments of the Trump presidency. The Trump presidency promised that there was a vaccine reserve, only for us to discover at the last moment that many of the states calling on the federal government to mobilize the vaccine reserve, have not been able to get that vaccine reserve. And the figures have gone up because in the initial moments, President Trump refused to listen to the scientists. He hijacked the work of the scientists. But now we have a new president coming in who has prioritized, who is setting aside about $20 billion out of a $1.9 trillion package to address the emergency that the United States faces. We hope that the Biden-Harris COVID team will be able to make a difference as the incoming president has promised within the first 100 days of his presidency. Leadership matters. That's the lesson.
I mean, it is key to have on leadership. And I keep saying this, women have done better than men. Is there something men should learn from women? I think there's a lot they should learn. Look at countries like Taiwan. Look at countries like New Zealand. Look at what Jacinda Ardern has done. Look at the fight, in Germany with Angela Merkel, forthright leadership. Amidst all of this leadership, then there's also madness. Madness on a scale I've never seen before. A lot of conspiracy theories, which stems from America, and it trickles down here. When you hear the conspiracy theory from the mouth of people like Senator Dino Melaye and the governor of Kogi, these are pretty much the same refrains in America that the evangelical right will say. Don't trust the vaccines. You don't know what it will be. It might even be the mark of the beast. mRNA vaccines are different. There's no science that proves the fact that you can encode something in an mRNA vaccine. The Pfizer issue was a separate issue, was a trial issue. If you're mounting that conspiracy, it holds no water. It's even wrong. The governor is dead wrong, deadpan wrong. There's a malaria vaccine, as a matter of fact. But it's not popular because it didn't pass through 50% acceptance rates. A malaria vaccine has been worked on. He said other diseases like HIV, they've not solved it. They're antiretrovirals. People that have HIV live their life to the fullest now because the viral load has reduced. Magic Johnson, the popular basketballer, had HIV since the 80s. He's still alive and well. It's no longer the days of people like Otto Ashe any longer that there were no antiretrovirals. What did he say again? He said there's no vaccine for cancer. There are some cancers that are, that are started as a result of exposure to human papilloma virus that have vaccines for them. And that's the push when you hear the talk about cervical cancer. So all their facts, I've been able to dispute the 3 facts of the governor now to show you it's wrong. It has no basis in science. They should go get schooled. They should go back and read their books. Thirdly, leadership has to be the case here. Because what will scare me is the fact that a governor that doesn't believe in the vaccine, a state is giving the 3rd largest amount of vaccines when they bring the 100,000 vaccines. So somebody had better talk to him now. And the president should stand up here and tell all the people that are not in tandem with this plan to please shut up, keep their mouth off it. There should be leadership. There should be cohesiveness. Some governors in the Governors Forum can be talking about getting refrigeration already for the vaccines, and some governors in the same Governors Forum be saying the vaccines are not good. There should be cohesiveness of leadership because, you see, they are the leaders that are fighting the conspiracy theory the people have and the apathy at which they have to this vaccine.